All right, awesome. So let's kick it off. Just so everyone's aware, this meeting is being recorded, and we'll be using the Q&A session tonight rather than the chat function. But wanted to introduce Dr. Jamie Shelton. Thank you so much for being here with us at USA Triathlon tonight. She is from the USOPC, and I'm actually going to let her kind of give a little bit more of her background. But really excited to kick off the season and talk about that intersection of mental health and sports and how, we got to prepare mentally for the season as well as physically. So I'm going to hand it off to the expert. Dr. Shelton, you go ahead and get started for us whenever you're ready.
All right, thank you. It is a pleasure to be with you here all tonight. So I am Dr. Jamie Shelton. I am a psychologist with the ESOPC. I am a dually credentialed provider, so I am both trained in clinical psychology, but also in sport performance psychology. So really excited to be here with you all today. And today we're going to be going through how to nurture well-being as you prepare for the season. Here we go. All right, so I do have a disclosure, and it really is just that all the opinions, viewpoints, and everything that's going to be presented today is going to represent me and not the USOPC. All right, so I'm going to hop right in here. And by doing so, start with what self-care actually is. We can recognize that taking care of ourselves is something that can be really useful when it comes to being our best as a person, as an athlete, and as a performer. So basically, self-care, how do you take care of yourself? That's going to involve these three different areas of how you actually think about your physical body, your emotions, and your emotional state, and your mental well-being. So when I talk about self-care, I don't mean just instances of doing things that are helpful as much as how do we identify and consider regular strategies that are going to work for you in both short and long-term situations. And some of the benefits of things like this can really be reflected in not just performance, but thinking about energy levels, ability to focus, and being resilient as an athlete and a person. All right. So I mentioned routines, and really, when it comes to having things that you do regularly, first thing I always like to do is take a second and consider, what do you currently do to take care of yourself in these three areas: physically, emotionally, and mentally. Okay. And the cool thing about this is that it can look really different for each person. So your individual routines can be a really good reflection of what you know about yourself. So the reason I like to highlight this, just getting started, is because our brains really do prioritize our physical bodies before our mental and emotional regulation or management. For example, if you've ever been hangry, you might get what I mean. So if we are hungry, tired, really stressed, or just physically exhausted, it can be a little bit harder to think about how do we best manage, having a conversation when we just really want to, for example, take a nap or have a snack. So when it comes to routines, things that take care of you physically can be a really good base. So for example, sleep is a big one, and sleep can really benefit from things like having regular routines, having options that I would call transportable. So things that you can do that are going to reflect it's a consistency, and when you go to sleep and when you wake up, and things that you can take with you. So if you're on the road or if you're at competition, that you still know that your bedtime routine is your bedtime routine, regardless of where you are. Okay. And recharging yourself as a person, that's kind of a tricky one sometimes, because we have different events each day, and those different daily events can use different amounts of energy. So when it comes to recharging, I think it's really helpful to consider what you have available to you, what you tend to use regularly, and things that we can do to get assistance if we're feeling stuck or what we normally would use isn't as effective as we might want it to be. And when it comes to structure, structure is really great, right? We have things that we do regularly that we can engage with, that we know we just enjoy. Awesome. But we also need to be flexible with that, because they're helpful, but it can be really crucial to plan to be adaptable because things that we expect don't necessarily always happen. And the way we intended on having our day, our event, our competition go might not always just fall into line. So being adaptable and flexible with our routines can be really beneficial. Starting with this idea of taking care of ourselves mentally, we've got this mental health continuum model. And I like to think about our traffic light situation. Green means go, red means stop. We happen to have orange added in here, but kind of the same idea of this continuum. So in the green area, we're going to call it healthy. And healthy doesn't mean that everything's great. Healthy just means that we're in that range of typical fluctuations. Things are kind of happening in a way that still work really well. And the bottom area there, where it says nurture support systems, is really interesting because when we talk about nurturing those things, it's more so that how do you maintain being in the green? Okay. Compared to the yellow where we might be reacting. And that's where you kind of notice things are impacting you, where things might be really able to benefit from taking that time to recognize the limits, to take breaks, to try to figure out what's going on that's causing this reaction to occur, if you will. Injured is going to be where there's real distress going on. There's something definitely wrong, or going that feels like it's going wrong. And that's a good place to make sure that we're seeking help, right? And that's where self-care goes from being something that we think is a really good idea to something that we really absolutely need to engage with, and keeping self at the forefront. And then when you hit ill, there's that red part, right? That's where the things that might be going on are absolutely interrupting our ability just to do what we want to do. And that's where most people really benefit from engaging full out in some professional care. Okay. So that introduction gets me to the idea of what self-care might actually look like. So starting out, awareness is really, really one of our first stops. Thinking about what you know about yourself, what's worked for you, what maybe hasn't worked as well for you, and what you would like to do more or less of. Okay. So being aware of what you need, what you want, what you like, and also how those things have been helpful or less so in response to different stressors. Stressors being things that happened either around you with other people, or even within ourselves, right? And stressor can be our own experience of something. So starting with awareness, and then we can move into thinking about routines. But in this case, we're talking about competition routines. So I've broken this down into pre-competition, competition, and post-competition routines. And big emphasis on simple, and simple being maybe like 1 to 3 things that you want to do sort of in the same order, with sort of the same intention before each competition, with flexibility again. But so pre-competition routine would be those specific things that help with energy levels, help getting you to the energy level that's most appropriate for your best performance. So some people might go into competition like up here, like, and that's actually way too much energy being channeled and they want to bring it more mid-range and kind of calm themselves down. While other people might feel really slow or almost like frozen. In those cases, energy levels have to come up. So in those instances, we think about if you're someone that wants to bring energy levels down, maybe that's having a breath practice. I'll show you a breathing exercise in the next slide. But for the person who wants to get their energy level up and kind of pull themselves up, that could be something like putting on earbuds and having like music that gets you pumping. So the idea of the pre-competition routine is to have things that you do, maybe things that you say to yourself, like mantras, or instructional things to get you where you want to be going into competition, right? During competition, you're going to want to actually not think so much, right? When it comes to competition, that's where we want to be able to execute. And that's really about maintaining focus and trying to let go of any mistakes or anything that might throw off your normal pattern. That's actually going to be associated with some of the mindfulness things we're going to talk about as well. And then for post-competition, I think about how do you reflect on performance, and then how do you use that information to keep moving forward and continue growing? Okay, so from that post-competition routine, we can think about recovery as well. Most people have physical recovery built in, but your mental recovery might look different for someone else's. Some people might want to hop into something like a performance journal, putting down things they did really well and goals for the next time. Someone else might want to take that space and have like a nice meal and get some rest and come back to it, next training day. Prioritizing recovery is more so about making sure that you have time to do that check-in and decide what would be helpful for you to be able to return back to your training, to your competition. Okay. So taking care of yourself mentally and emotionally is going to be a process. And right now, I'm throwing out like a lot of ideas. And what I want all of you to consider is, what do you currently do? What might you actually not have been aware that you're already doing? And what might be helpful to either supplement or to kind of intentionally build in as something you either do before, during, or after competition that allows you to stay where you want to be for your best physical performance from the mental approach. All right. And I actually have trusting your training under self-care. And that might sound a little odd at first, but something that can happen is sort of this urge to try to do everything better than we've ever done it before so that we get our absolute best performance. And heck yeah, right? We want to perform. But really, what we know about people's performance is that when you're intentional about what you're doing and do what you do regularly and constantly, engage in an active, confident sort of way of talking to yourself, you're going to have really pretty good results consistently. Confidence is really just trusting that you have knowledge of what you're supposed to be doing, that you have the physical skills to do it, and the ability to go out there and get it done. So really staying intentional about doing what you know how to do, and then practicing trusting in those different things. And I say that with the idea that we want to be both realistic and optimistic in the way we frame things for ourselves mentally. So positive self-talk is amazing. And if you don't believe it, it's not as effective. So I am the greatest who's ever existed in this particular area. That could be really good. But if you're like, but am I? Then you might not get the same impact on your performance. But if you were to say something like, I've trained really hard, I put in the time, my body is ready, I'm going to give it everything I've got and have a great time, you might actually believe that. And that is going to have that same positive impact on approach. So talking about how we think, how we feel, emotions are pretty important. And I really like to start with the fact that they serve a purpose and they're super normal. These are the things that let us know what's going on, how we are experiencing the world around us, and also allow us to connect with other humans so we can tend to see different things that happen. So everyone experiences emotions and we all experience them on a spectrum. So for example, I might feel pretty chill, or I might be ecstatic, right? I might be miffed, or I might be furious. That we can have emotions that are kind of mild or very extreme, very intense, and everything in between. And also, our emotions and our emotional states tend to fluctuate, so they come and go. So these things that come, go, give us information and can come in different degrees of intensity also can give us information about how we're experiencing something. So when I say they serve a purpose, I also mean that they're telling us about what's going on. For example, joy, excitement, happiness, that might be something that's telling us to do more of something, that this feels really good for us. This is a healthy thing for me as a human. Yes, more of that. Anger might let us know that someone's violated a boundary or something just violated an expectation that we have. So anger lets us know something isn't going the way we want or need. Sadness can let us know that we're missing something, that maybe there's something we want to be a part of, maybe there's someone or something that we'd like to engage with. Jealousy lets us know we want something. Like, oh, that's something that is important to me, something that matters. And then fear keeps us alive. Fear and anxiety is fear's sort of monitoring system. And fear exists specifically to get us active and keep us safe. I use the example of like if you're crossing the street, you're in the crosswalk and someone is running a light, you kind of want fear to kick in and give you that little jolt so that you hurry up and cross the street instead of kind of being caught in like a super logical mind frame where you're going, should I go left or right? And how fast is that car really going? Right? We really want our emotions to help us. And the way we perceive them, what we take from the emotional experience is really going to be how we as conscious thinking humans can use them best. So our emotions serve a purpose and they give us information. There's this idea that we can think about the information, our thoughts related to the emotional experiences we have, and decide if they're going to be productive or unproductive. Productive meaning that something we can do something about. Productive is going to be something that we have the ability to take action on, to maybe plan for, or to address in some way. Unproductive is going to be something that's out of our control or that maybe isn't even happening yet. So, for example, unproductive things could really be an indication that we need to take care of ourselves in something that is distressing or uncomfortable, but we can't necessarily impact the way we'd like. Okay. So letting go of those thoughts can be hard, but self-soothing can be something that we all engage in. In this case, I mean self-soothing via our senses. So that might be having different things that you have historically found really helpful using sensory items. So if we were to say like touch, it could be like a soft blanket or a pet. Sight could be following your favorite artist on Instagram or looking outside if you have a nice view, even looking at, say, like any pictures or photos that you have or that you really enjoy. Smell is a really strong sense. So things that you find soothing or enjoyable can be really great, or things that maybe you might not have considered before. Like many people find the smell of lavender soothing, and so smell can be a great way to experiment with different things. Taste could be having a cup of tea, or a sip of water, or anything that you find really helpful, like maybe a mint or a piece of dark chocolate or something like that. So self-soothing via sensory things is really about having something that you can engage with mindfully in that moment that you also find comforting. Okay. Breathing can be a really good way to help regulate. So our breath is a naturally occurring, naturally regulating part of our bodies, but we have the ability to take control over it. We have the ability to decide how deeply we breathe, how long we inhale, whether we hold that or we exhale. And box breathing, up here in the corner of a presentation, box breathing is a really good way to be able to help reset. So if we're feeling agitated and this is something that would fall into that category of being something we can't actively do something about, maybe taking some breaths and using that to control our breathing can be a way to help calm or to recenter or refocus. When we do take control of our breath, it's sort of like telling our less conscious parts of our brain that we don't need to be activated. We don't have to get ready to do something to make sure that we're safe or that we're okay. So if you would like, please feel free to practice along. I'm just going to take through a box breathing example, okay? So the way it works is that you inhale for 4 seconds, hold that breath for 4 seconds, exhale for 4 seconds, and then hold for another 4. And the idea is that this can really help either reset breath or can be a way to, again, kind of get calmer or get more focused. So if you'd like right now, I'm going to do some counting and feel free to breathe along with that count. Okay, so ready? Breathe in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, exhale, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4. Do it again. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, exhale, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4. Some people really find that helpful, and some people don't like it as much, and that's okay. There are lots of different ways to practice breath and regulating breathing. This is one that we tend to find pretty useful, but if just taking one deep breath in, doing a really long controlled exhale is good for you, great. I'm a fan of what works, and we'll just try to give some suggestions for things that might be helpful. So, talking about managing our emotions, when we acknowledge what we're feeling, we automatically have a little bit better likelihood of being able to manage it. When we label how we feel, we kind of take the emotion from our emotional part of our brain and bring it up here and are using our prefrontal cortex or our thinking brain to identify what's going on. And that can be a really good way to sort of reset if we're in a high level of like emotionality. So journaling can be a really good way to practice acknowledging and labeling how we feel. In the bottom right corner here, I do have the code for an app. The app you can also just download if you're interested. It's called How We Feel. It's a journaling app that I really like. It gives some really good prompts. So if someone's not so familiar or comfortable with kind of just identifying how they feel, writing it out and working through it, sometimes it's helpful to have prompts. So this app has prompts for whether something is high or low energy, and then pleasant or unpleasant, and does a really good job of giving you a whole list of different words that can describe emotions and definitions of those. In addition to that, you can journal by writing stuff down, by doing a voice note, or by taking a picture. I'm a big fan of pictures and voice notes. So I like having variety in the way we can journal. There's also some coping strategies on there, but I also like the fact that you can kind of see where your emotions go. And if you document where you are, you can see where you were the day you were feeling really excited versus where you were the day when you're feeling kind of bummed out. And so that's a free app. They're supposed to not sell your data, and it was actually created in conjunction with some therapists. So just a recommendation. But also when it comes to journaling, I'm a big fan of doing what someone's most comfortable with. So sometimes people draw, sometimes people actually write things out, sometimes people will do like bullet journals. There's a lot of different ways to do that. But the idea is that when we identify what's going on, we have a little bit more ability to decide how we manage that. Distraction is on here, and not because distraction is something that we necessarily do all the time, but distraction can be an effective short-term strategy for dealing with really intense emotional experiences. So if stress levels are really high and you just want to be able to focus, using something like music, show, some reading, conversation with someone that you enjoy talking to can all be ways to sort of get some space in that emotional experience so that the levels can come down and then you can go back to it when you're feeling more prepared. So distraction can be a really effective short-term coping strategy. And connection and self-compassion, I think, are really big. When I say connection, I mean using whatever your support system may look like, whether that's teammates, friends, family, pets, right? Whatever it may be, but something that allows you to feel connected to either another person, another thing, or even could be a connection to nature, right? Not it's very much open to whatever makes you feel that sense. And I did want to give some acknowledgement to self-compassion. So self-compassion is not something I say as a way of taking it easy on ourselves, but actually giving ourselves credit for doing our best with what our best is that day. I will admit I'm very guilty of saying our best is different every day. And so the idea is not that we're okay with not being at our best, but we're more so taking the energy that we would put into being concerned that we're not our best to giving 100% of whatever we have that day. So being your best will vary, but giving yourself credit for doing that work takes the different energy you might use, kind of being hard on yourself, and gives you the ability to direct it towards what you actually want to be doing instead. Right. So, when it comes to some of these different things, mindfulness practice can be really great. So, mindfulness is really just being in the moment. What's going on right now that we can identify, that we can interact with. Okay. And when it comes to meditation, meditation, the way I define it is how we practice being mindful. And meditation can be formal, it can be sitting down and doing a specific focus, it can be going through an exercise on something like Headspace, or it can be informal. It can be going on a walk and trying to observe everything you can be yoga or stretching or being really tuned into your body while you're training. So mindfulness is the awareness. And when we talk about doing some of the practice of these things, the benefits are that we're able to practice being in the moment, which is a skill. Being able to stay right here and right now is a skill. And mental skills can actually work very similarly to physical skills. We have to practice them. And if you haven't done it before, you might not be as good at it as you would like to be. So focus, bring your attention to something. That's a skill. So when we practice that focus, we tend to get better at it. Reduced anxiety. So anxiety tends to be associated with thinking about what could happen or what could go wrong. And when we're here in the moment, it's a lot harder to be worried about what could be coming or what might happen. What if isn't consistent with right now. And performance, most of us do better at any task when we are focused on that task and we're staying with it. So my photo here is going to be our 5 senses grounding technique. This is going to be an informal way to practice being mindful. So in this case, nice countdown. I might ask you to give it a try if you are interested. So the way we do this is we just go through them. So taking a second, look around, 5 things you can see. And I usually give the prompt of here saying that 5 things you can see that maybe are interesting or that catch your eye. It could be 5 things that are a certain color or shape that are around you. Okay. 4 things you can feel physically. So I'll give you an example. My 4 things might be my feet on the floor, the chair on my back, my elbows on the desk, and my hand on the mouse. 3 things you can hear. 3 things you hear might come from nearby, like your phone or computer, but also could be coming from outside the door or outside of the building or room that you're in. All right, 2 things you can smell. Most of us can not really notice a lot of smell, so if you notice that there isn't much to notice, are you wearing like a lotion? Do you have something to drink that might have a smell or an aroma or laundry detergent? or deodorant or lack thereof, you just finished a workout. All right. And then one thing you can taste. I have a cup of tea here. So that would be taking a sip and observing what that actually tastes like. Doing these things with the intention of taking in information is a really good way to just get ourselves grounded in this moment. I use my feet on the ground as an actual thing I notice, but grounding is really about finding that connection to the here and now.
Hey, Dr. Shelton, can I interrupt with a question that came in from the chat?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome. So this person is wondering, they said, thanks, Dr. Shelton. It's helpful to frame self-care by pre, during, and post-competition. What are your thoughts on the night before competition? Anything in addition to the emotional regulation and meditation?
Yeah. So I think the night before can be a really great time to think about how you get yourself, I'd say, ready to get ready. So what do you need as far as sleep goes? Some people bring, their pillow or their blanket, but others might use things like, well, lavender essential oil or white noise apps on phones, things that can allow you to sleep as much as possible. Some people might bring in a visualization practice. So I do think of that as being a bit of a mindful practice, but visualization can be a really powerful tool for preparation. I tend to say if you're going to do a visualization practice the night before competition, to do it before you start your bedtime routine. Mostly because when we do a visualization practice, we want to get really immersed in it, thinking about all of the different elements of where we are, what we would hear, what we would feel, what we would smell, right? Really thinking about everything that goes in. And that tends to get most of us pretty activated. That wakes us up. So visualization can be a really good tool. Bedtime routine, thinking about what you do before bed can be really helpful, and trying to keep that consistent. So that's where the idea of having transportable things for your bedtime routine can be really helpful. So if it's take a shower, brush my teeth, read my book, do some deep breaths, and then go to sleep, that might be something that's pretty transportable and something that you can practice in advance. When it comes to maybe potential anxiety or nervousness, that's where something like our self-talk or mantras could be really helpful. So remember that you have evidence and proof of your ability to perform. I'm going into this after however many days, months, years of training, and this is my ability, and I'm going to do my best to do that best. So I think having a routine pre-competition can be right before, but honestly can even go through the days or weeks before, how you get started. Things like nutrition and hydration can be really important as well. If you're traveling, it can be kind of tough. So having to be really intentional about what your body needs as in regards to fueling and hydration in addition to rest. But yeah. Curious, any other questions in that area?
I think that's it for now, but I will keep them coming as they come into the chat. Thank you.
All right, awesome. Okay, so I think I kind of referenced some of this already, but I think of our mindfulness practice as really training our brains. So if you would like, I'm going to give an example of a mindfulness meditation that can be guided in just a minute here. But the idea is that the more we practice something, the better we get at it. Mindfulness meditation practices are often indicated as things that can be really great for relaxing and doing better in performance. But the goal isn't always relaxation. Relaxation can be a bit of a side effect because we've stopped our brain from sort of bouncing around all over the place. So having one thing we bring our attention to that we frame as what we're trying to achieve in that whatever time period it is, and letting go of things that come in without judging them as good or bad can be really, really useful. I got helpful versus unhelpful instead of good or bad on here, because I think that's a really good way we can practice being mindful and all day, every day, and honestly. So going into competition, might go, oh my gosh, you know what? I definitely did not hydrate as much as I wanted to. It's like, oh, this is so bad. It's going to kind of take that whole thought process that you've got, and it's going to just make it a little bit harder to bring back up to that positive, useful baseline. So, all right, not being as hydrated as I want is not helpful. And I can direct my attention towards what might be most helpful right now. And that might be, grabbing a drip drop or something. So what I want to do now is do a guided meditation, and just a couple of minutes long, nothing too long, in which we're going to bring our attention to breath and observation, and practicing this idea of staying focused on one thing and letting go of the rest. So if you would like to participate, I'm going to welcome you to do so. Generally tend to recommend trying to sit up straight, have your feet on the ground and your arms or your hands resting somewhere comfortably so that you're not going to be too fidgety. Shoulders over the hips, head neutral, and either closing your eyes or lowering your eyes so that you have a single focal point in front of you. So if you are in this position, I'm going to ask you to bring your attention to your breath. So not changing how you breathe, but just observing what it feels like to inhale and exhale. Feeling the physical sensation of air coming in and maybe being warmer as it goes out. Cool air in, warm air out. And perhaps bringing your attention to the nose. Feeling the breath as it comes in through the nostrils and out. And perhaps attention to the chest, noticing the subtle movement with each breath. Or maybe even observing the breath down in the belly, observing the rise and fall as your diaphragm works with your lungs. Wherever it feels most comfortable, nose, chest, belly, use that as a focal point to just observe breath coming in and out. And while doing this, you may notice distractions. Could be noise, could be my voice, could be physical sensations like an urge to move. And what I'll ask you to do, if you do observe any distractions, is to acknowledge them and say hi to them. And if you do need to move, mindfully, intentionally adjust, and then let go of that distraction and bring your attention back to observing the breath. Not observing the breath as too shallow or too deep, but just observing how each breath might be exactly what you need in that moment. And now I'll ask you to bring your attention back to the room, maybe wiggling your toes and your fingers, kind of coming back to the present. and feeling free to open your eyes with the bell. Okay. So that is an example of a breath awareness meditation. And many people can find that to be pretty relaxing, but not everyone does, and that's okay. The cool thing about meditation, mindful practices, that you can do the things that help you train the focal point, the things that allow you to feel like you're practicing, and practice means that we're constantly working on growth. So, informal meditation, formal mindfulness practices, these are things that can really be useful for trying to stay in the moment. So, letting go of distractions. Distractions could be our thoughts, it could be mistakes, it could be not getting that time we wanted, could be that sort of that one sore spot that just you want to feel better for tomorrow. To sort of give yourself that space to continue practicing, acknowledging it, letting it go, and bringing your attention to the place you want it to be. All right. So I wanted to make sure I left room for discussion or questions. Please feel free to ask any questions, or if there's anything that you'd like more clarification on. I'm very happy to discuss.
Awesome. And this is just a reminder to all the participants that are on. If you type in the Q&A section, that's where we're able to put our questions tonight. So if anyone's on and would like to do that, that would be awesome. Otherwise, I think we received some in the pre-form that people filled out, Jamie. Did you want me to go ahead and pull those up, or did you have them in front of you?
Yes. So I did try to get some of them in advance, but yeah, if there's anything I didn't address, please, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no, I'm not seeing anyone else. If anyone's on and wants to ask a question, again, feel free to throw something in the Q&A section. I know you answered the one that I did see come in. Let's see if there's anything else. I think I had seen one in the preparation question, and I think you covered a little bit about this, but maybe coming back, recovering like after, a failure, a bad race, or even like an extreme injury or things like that. I'd had a couple people, ask me that offhand or in the forums. Have you talked about that at all, or would you be willing to kind of go more in depth about that?
Sure, yeah. So when it comes to, I'm going to say, unwanted outcomes or events, um, it can be really helpful to give space for whatever you're thinking, whatever you're feeling. Trying to stop thoughts doesn't work for most of us. If I were to tell you to not think about pink elephants, and let's say for the next 10 seconds, do not picture a bubblegum pink baby elephant with big pink ears and a cute little curly pink tail. I know elephants have long tails, but or a pink elephant has a curly tail. Odds are you thought about it at least once, even in the process of trying to not think about it. So instead of saying, don't think about pink elephants, I might say, I really want you to try to focus on a mental image of a blue tiger. Would it be like light blue with dark blue stripes? Would it have clear like toenails, or would they be like blue too? Would it have bright blue eyes and blue whiskers, right? So the pink elephant might be there, but you're probably going to have a much easier time bringing your attention to that tiger. So if I were to say, don't think about that problem, that mistake, how disappointing it is to have an injury, it's probably not going to be effective, and it's going to lead to some frustration. So acknowledging what's going on, using our awareness of the experience, is a really good first step. And then the next is to think about how those thoughts, how those feelings, how your experience of that event are impacting you. Is that a place where it's helpful to talk to someone? Do you have that person that you can talk to? Do you use a mental health clinician or a sports psychologist? Or is it something that's helpful to set goals around? Do you break down things into short-term and long-term goals, things that are approachable and achievable and allow you to focus on each day at a time? The idea of letting go of mistakes is really hard. So it's not just saying, oh, ignore it, as much as think about how you can direct your energy into something that will be more helpful for you. Big fan of framing our energy and ways, like almost like the charge on our phone. Some days, phone's like 100% when we wake up and we can do so much with it. But if we play games or if we scroll, we might notice our battery is pretty low by midday. And then we have to figure out if we're going to recharge or use our phone less. We have mental, physical, emotional, spiritual energy. And when we're aware of where our energy is going, we can decide how we want to use it, or if we do need to recharge. And if that's time by ourselves or time with others or time with really specific directed behavior. But thinking about your energy levels, where it's going and where you want it to go. So I think one of the biggest things about, I'm going to say, like difficult or challenging events is giving yourself space for the experience, acknowledging that disappointment, that anger, that frustration, whatever may go along with it, and then deciding what you need in that moment to maybe feel better or feel more grounded, more connected mentally and emotionally. And then what are the goals you can set for yourself to kind of come back from it? What we know is that athletic mindsets benefit most from acknowledging mistakes and then moving on. When we get stuck in our mistakes, we're not growing. Growth mindsets are really all about taking what works and building off of them. When we are more fixed or stuck, we're kind of in one place, not giving ourselves, I'd say, the room to see things differently and expand our perspectives. And the cool thing about being a person is that we can really practice directing our attention in lots of different ways. So it's a skill, but growth mindset can be really, really cool. And I think our abilities to use our minds and the way we talk to ourselves, the way we direct our attention can be really powerful. And that's one of the big things I really want any athlete to know, which is that I want you to be empowered to know more about yourself, to know how you approach things, what works for you, and also how you can make adaptations and continue to grow.
Awesome. I love that. Thanks, Jamie. I think I'll end with this question for all of our participants live, and then for anyone watching this back, if you could give just one piece of advice. A lot of these, especially our women, have really busy lives and, they're training, but they're also, doing a lot of other things on the side. If there's one simple takeaway, I know you went through a lot of things today, and they could only do one thing, what would that be, do you think?
My one thing's probably still a combo, but I'd say give 100% of whatever percentage you have that day. Be kind to yourself and take it one thing at a time.
Awesome. All right. I think that is all we've got for tonight. We want to thank all of you for that joined us live. And then Dr. Shelton, thank you so much for being on with the triathlon community. I'm excited to share this out so that people can watch us back as well. But yeah, thank you all so much for joining us. And we hope you all have a great rest of your evening. Thanks so much, Dr. Shelton.